Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. Walter Harrison Beckford was a man whose life seemed mapped out for success from a very young age. The son of an economics professor and a nurse, he grew up in a modest but loving home, where hard work, dignity, and a sense of duty were valued. From an early age, he displayed a rare intelligence and a quiet ambition, the kind that doesn't shout, but patiently builds. By 52, Walter had become one of the most respected figures in New York City finance. He ran Beckford Holdings, a conglomerate of international businesses in the technology, real estate, and healthcare sectors. But what distinguished him from other Wall Street tycoons was his philanthropic commitment, quiet but profound. He funded college scholarships for disadvantaged youth, arts programs in underserved neighborhoods, and mobile clinics in rural areas. His reputation, though built on impressive figures, rested on his integrity, his humility, and his sincere desire to make the world a little less harsh for those who were not as fortunate as him. But behind this public image, Walter lived in a carefully constructed, almost austere solitude. He had never been married. No children. Few close friends. Too many betrayals. Too many disappointments. The man who had earned the trust of thousands of colleagues, partners, and charities no longer readily extended his own on a personal level. He returned home each evening to a silent apartment, with only an old record player and a few leather-bound books for company, which he reread tirelessly. That evening, however, he had decided to celebrate. Not a new contract, nor a stock market record, but the imminent opening of a pediatric wing he was financing at Mount Sinai Hospital, dedicated to children with rare diseases. A project close to his heart since the death of a little boy named Elijah, whom he had met during a visit to the hospital 3 years earlier. The 7-year-old boy, suffering from an incurable disease, had given him a drawing of a hospital brighter, with toys everywhere. Walter had kept this drawing in his wallet, so he had booked a private table at the Golden Cedar, one of Manhattan's most prestigious restaurants, perched atop a glass-enclosed skyscraper that overlooked the city like a modern cathedral. The dining room, decorated in dark wood and golden light, was bathed in hushed elegance. The city shone beneath their feet like a carpet of diamonds. The evening wind rustled the windows, but inside, all was warmth, fine glass, and linen tablecloths. Matteo Rinaldi, the Michelin-starred chef, had personally designed the menu: wild mushroom risotto, roasted lobster with tarragon, and a yuzu and dark chocolate dessert. Rinaldi was renowned for his clinical perfection. No detail escaped him. For Walter, it was an opportunity to celebrate quietly, away from the microphones, with good wine and a sense of accomplishment. He was alone at his table, and that suited him. A glass of Barolo 2001 in hand, he took the time to smell the aromas, to close his eyes for a moment, as if to savor the piece, rare and precious. Then the risotto arrived, steaming hot, delicately arranged on a white porcelain plate. The waiter stepped aside with a whisper. Walter lifted his spoon elegantly, ready to taste the first bite. It was at that precise moment that everything changed. A voice bursts forth, cutting through the air like lightning in a clear sky. "Sir, don't eat that." A scream. Sharp, tense, desperate. It cracked against the restaurant's gilded walls like a whip. Heads turned. Silence, instantly, was total. Walter paused, the spoon frozen a few inches from his lips. His gaze, at first incredulous, fell on the source of the voice. A young girl, panting and visibly panicked, was running towards him. She was wearing an oversized chef's jacket, clumsily tied at the waist, and flour-stained pants. Her badge was hanging askew. Her curly brown hair was held back with a single elastic band. She looked barely 12 or 13 years old. She arrived at the table, her hands shaking, her breath short. "Don't eat that, please, sir. It's dangerous. The mushrooms, they're not the right ones. I've seen them. I know them. They're Ammonites datamonites phalloides." Walter frowned, still uncomprehending, as the kitchen staff, alerted by the commotion, arrived in turn. Chef Rinaldi, livid, rushed to the dish, his trembling hand lifting the chunks of brown mushrooms. His face froze in horror. "My God!" All eyes turned abruptly, some with annoyance, others with concern, toward the source of the scream. The hushed silence of the room, until then punctuated by the clinking of glasses and discreet conversations, had just shattered like crystal under a shock. A young girl was running toward the central table. Her slight figure stood in stark contrast to the restaurant's understated elegance. Her oversized chef's jacket flapped around her like a sail in the wind. Her dirty sneakers skidded slightly on the polished marble, and her hair, untied by sweat, clung to her forehead. Her face was flushed with exertion and a deeper emotion, fear. A sincere, animal, instinctive fear. Arriving a few steps from Walter Beckford's table, she stopped abruptly, breathless, trembling. Her gaze fell straight on him, imploring, urgent. But she didn't back down. She didn't look away, despite the murmurs of indignation and disapproving glances from some of the posh customers. "My name is Lucy Morales," she stammered in a strangled voice. "I'm an apprentice in the kitchen. Please stop. I know what's in this dish." Walter, still motionless, the spoon dangling between his fingers, blinked slowly. He wasn't a man to be intimidated. And yet, something in the girl's gaze struck him right in the heart. This wasn't a show. This wasn't overzealousness. It was pure despair. Lucy took a step closer, her arms slightly outstretched as if to physically prevent him from eating. She spoke quickly, sometimes stumbling over her words, but the conviction emanating from her was irrefutable. "The chef, he made a mistake. He was supposed to use chanterelles. But I saw the basket. He took the one next to him, the one a supplier had put down by mistake. They're death caps. They look alike, but they kill. Even one bite, even a tiny one. You could be poisoned in less than a few hours." A heavy silence fell over the room. The kind of silence that arises when you sense a tragedy has been narrowly avoided, but no one dares to believe it yet. The neighboring customers froze, some standing, others half-rising, fascinated by the scene. Chef Matteo Rinaldi entered the room a few seconds later, alerted by the commotion. He approached, frowning, ready to reprimand. But as soon as he saw Lucy, and especially what she was pointing at on the plate, his face paled. He immediately recognized the white gills, the olive-green tint at the base of the cap, the signs of an insidious danger that only connoisseurs knew how to detect. "My God," he murmured, leaning forward, his hands trembling. He brushed the mushrooms with his fingertips. Then he slowly straightened up, as if weighed down by an immense weight. "It's true," he said finally, his voice breaking. "It's a mistake. A terrible mistake." The world seemed to collapse around him. The restaurant staff stood frozen in shock. A waitress quietly burst into tears. The air in the room had become unbreathable. He had just brushed with death. And this child, for she was little more than a child, had just saved his life. The manager immediately called an ambulance. Emergency medical personnel arrived quickly, along with emergency room doctors and a health inspector. Walter was taken to the back of the restaurant for preliminary tests. The poison hadn't been ingested. He was safe, thanks to a voice that could have been ignored, thanks to an apprentice no one had seen coming. The next day, the story made headlines. "Apprentice saves billionaire's life. Lucy Morales, 13, averts disaster at the Golden Cedars." Television networks reported the incident with emotion. The press celebrated her calm, her speed, and above all, her knowledge of mushrooms. Social media went wild. The hashtags #LucyLaBrave and #SavedByKnowledge went viral. It soon became known that Lucy had been introduced to botany by her grandfather, a former Vermont forest ranger. Since she was 6, she had spent her summers identifying plants, drawing mushrooms in an old notebook, learning to recognize the beautiful, the rare, and the dangerous. This knowledge, born in a wooden cabin by a lake, had just saved a powerful man at the top of a steel tower. A few months later, far from the glare and glitz of New York, Walter Beckford stood in a modest office with walls lined with bookcases filled with worn books, located in an inconspicuous part of the city. It was a simple, almost humble space, a far cry from the luxurious suites where he usually made his financial decisions. Sitting opposite him, Lucy Morales had grown up since that famous evening at the Golden Cedar. She wore a simple dress, her hair still curly, framing a face that had become more confident, but still imbued with an almost fragile sweetness. Her gaze shone with an insatiable curiosity and a deep gratitude. Walter looked at him for a long time, silently, before breaking the silence. "Lucy, I can't thank you enough for what you've done. What you've accomplished isn't just heroic, It's a lesson in humanity. You saved my life. But more importantly, you reminded everyone here that vigilance, knowledge, and courage matter more than anything else. He took a file out of his briefcase and placed it gently in front of her. I want to fully fund your education, all the way to university. And I'd also like to offer you an internship at my foundation. There you'll be able to use your keen mind and curiosity to help other young people like you. Lucy felt her eyes moisten. As the child of a mother who was a housekeeper in an old hotel in the Bronx, she had never imagined that her love of plants and mushrooms would take her so far. She looked down, smiled shyly, then looked up with renewed determination. Thank you, Mr. Beckford. I will not disappoint you. I want to learn and one day help others as you helped my family. Over the years, Lucy grew into a brilliant young woman. Her days were divided between university classes and research laboratories. Specializing in biology, she quickly chose mycology, fascinated by the complexity and richness of the fungal world. Her initial passion transformed into a profound vocation. She participated in innovative projects, developing antidotes for fungal poisoning, a little-known but deadly scourge in some rural and isolated areas. At the same time, she launched awareness campaigns in schools and villages, passing on this valuable, often life-saving knowledge. Walter, for his part, continued his philanthropic work, but now he was no longer alone. Lucy had become his ally and friend, a new light in his often austere life. When they met, their conversations mixed reflections on science, social commitment, and the fragility of life. Their relationship symbolized this unlikely encounter between two worlds that seemed separated by everything, that of a billionaire accustomed to control and power, and that of a young woman from humble beginnings, armed only with her passion and courage. But both knew that it was precisely this difference that had united them, like an invisible thread woven by life itself. The long-awaited day of the Mount Sinai Pediatric Wing's dedication had finally arrived. The hospital's large reception area was filled with a diverse and welcoming crowd. Doctors, nurses, families, donors, journalists, and of course, children, some still wearing bandages, but whose smiles were bursting with joy. The freshly painted walls were decorated with colorful frescoes depicting children's drawings, trees, and animals, symbols of hope and life. The atmosphere vibrated with collective emotion and a gentle and caring energy. At center stage, on a platform decorated with white flowers and flags, Walter Harrison Beckford spoke. His voice, usually calm and distant, was this time imbued with a genuine warmth and sincere gravity that immediately captivated the audience. Tonight, he began, looking around slowly, I want to thank someone very special, Lucy Morales. A murmur ran through the crowd. Then a proud smile lit up the face of Lucy, standing at his side. Walter continued, not only for his courage, but for his humanity. In our lives, we often look for heroes with extraordinary destinies, grandiose deeds. But sometimes, it's the most unexpected, the most humble voices that save lives. He paused, his eyes shining with emotion. That last-minute cry, that cry of alarm that prevented a tragedy, is a powerful reminder. Vigilance, knowledge, and determination can change the course of events. And it's not the size of the scale, but the size of the heart, that makes the difference. The audience applauds, some with tears in their eyes. Lucy, standing next to Walter, felt the warmth of these glances, this collective recognition. She met the eyes of children playing in the renovated wing, of nurses watching over their well-being, of relieved parents. In that suspended moment, she understood that that scream, uttered in panic, had changed much more than a life. It had opened a door to hope, to a future where every voice counts. She gently squeezed Walter's hand. A simple gesture, but one laden with promise and a friendship born in adversity and light.